Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. My favorite story of the day. May remember a couple days ago, Mike Lindell, the pillow guy. Weird stuff going on in Ohio with him. Who knows? But hey, it's Mike Lindell. What do we expect? Evidently decided he was going to go to Canada. He was going to get a truck. He's going to fill it with 10,000 of his pillows, and he was going to go to Canada. They denied him entrance. And you go, did you not think that one through there, Mike? And there's part of me that goes, did it on purpose? Again, you know, setting the victim narrative. And also, so he didn't have to give away 10,000 pillows. So he could claim, hey, I tried, and I was denied. The evil, bad Canadian government wouldn't let me in, because you know he's not vaccinated. And this whole thing is over the fact that the Canadian government doesn't want Canadian citizens coming into the U.S. Who are unvaccinated and then coming back, because we've so badly screwed this up. But I do find it interesting that the pillow guy was turned away and, again, played the victim. Not surprising. So, of course, the right-wing rage machine was in full tingly in the panties mode, all bunched up and wadded up, and complaining how, there's tyranny and how we just can't cross a border. This is the part that was hysterical to me. These are the people who wanted to build a damn wall, saying, no, the My Pillow guy should fill up his truck and just drive right on through, because he's the My Pillow guy. I mean, the hypocrisy, the idiocy, it knows no bounds. And look, that's the point. They're not bound by facts or reality or truth or anything. It's just whatever they can do to get people all riled up. And look, we've got people riled up at me, and I'm okay with that. Because I said from the beginning, and I've been very clear on the protest there in Ottawa, very clear from the very beginning, all in favor of people have the right to protest. It is a tactic. Do your tactic, move what you got to do what you have to do, push the message, but it's a tactic. It's not a strategy. A tactic is something to get you to a strategy. A strategy is a plan. You cannot indefinitely shut down trade lines. You can't shut down a city indefinitely. There's going to be a reaction. And if you were thinking about this, and again, as someone who has been part of these things, understanding that it is a tactic, you have to understand what the long game is. And I said, look, eventually they're going to come in, they're going to start pulling these people out. And I'll be honest, I'm surprised the Canadian government has taken as long as they have to act. I'm really surprised. Do you think, let's roll this back into the Wayback Machine. Do you think Donald Trump would have allowed Black Lives Matter to shut down the city of Washington, D.C. for 3 weeks and get between him and his Diet Coke? I mean, seriously, do you really think shutting off the ice cream supply line was going to happen? Of course it wasn't. He was dying. He was dying to send out the National Guard. Can you imagine no hamburgers for an entire 3 weeks? Can you seriously? I mean, stop and think about the ridiculous arguments that they're making. It is a tactic. A tactic is part of a strategy. That strategy is to build popular support and to move it forward in the political arena. It's not to just throw a temper tantrum in the middle of the street and have nothing for it. Understand, this is not a blanket. I've been told hundreds of things that just aren't true. Well, there's a mandate for every person in the entire country, and they're going to force people. They're going to grab and throw them down. They're going to jab them on. That I've even had someone tell me that they're enforcing the mandates right now. There are crews going around right now forcing people to be vaccinated. And I'm going, I don't know what planet you're living on. But that's not the reality. And look, the conversation on this, if I'm the Canadian Prime Minister, I'm going, look, folks, you're not going into the U.S. and bringing anything back. They're boogering this up. We're doing the best we can. If you don't like it, don't go. It's that simple. Go somewhere else. This is the weird part in all of this. Look, I support people's right to protest as part of a strategy. I have never, even when we were in Wisconsin all that time, you knew that it was going to end. You knew that you were going to have to make this a larger political movement. You knew that this was going to have other components. It was part of a strategy. And granted, that strategy was ongoing, and it was something that, was evolving. The strategy I'm seeing here is just chaos. It's about chaos. And it's about Americans sending money to Canada to keep the chaos going. Very, very interesting. I am right now the big dose of outrage candy. The intravenous outrage candy is now Spygate. Hillary, Spygate. And Hillary coming out and saying, well, the more Trump's misdeeds are exposed, the more that Fox News and the ilk lie. And you go, that's a nice statement. It's a good, I guess, good on a political bumper sticker, I guess. These are the people who were when they go low, we go high. As where I was like, when they go low, you stomp them into the ground. And if you ever played football, someone's coming at your knees, you push their face in the mud, and then you step on the back of their head so they don't do it again. And this is where Democrats have got to toughen up. This is where the message has to get tougher, because this Spygate nonsense is just that, nonsense. It is a fabricated crisis. It is made up. I saw the headlines. Oh, it was great. I mean, it was really you have to give the outrage machine credit. It was amazing. The headline: Durham, Hillary Clinton campaign paid tech company to infiltrate Trump servers. Durham bombshell, worse than Watergate. Durham report rocks the political world. I mean, it's great. Oh my gosh, this is breaking. It's incredible. Oh, we're going to get that. You know what? We're going to get her. Finally going to lock her up. And you had all the MAGA hats, running to get their red hats and their T-shirts and wrap themselves in the flag that they're supposed to be hanging from a pole instead of doing what they do with. Because now we get to lock her up. Only the problem is this is a giant nothing burger. I mean, an enormous nothing burger. There is nothing here. The whole thing, and this is beautiful, the whole tale was spun by a motion that was filed by Trump's selected special prosecutor, John Durham. He brought a case against this Michael Sussman, who he claims lied to the FBI back in September of 16 about Trump having links to Russia. Now they're saying, Sussman is a cybersecurity lawyer. They're saying, hey, he's got ties to the Democratic Party, and he does. But evidently, the story goes like this. Sussman told the CIA some stuff about Russian-made smartphones, these Yoda phones or whatever they are, being connected to networks at Trump Tower and at the White House, among a bunch of other spots. And immediately now they're going, oh my gosh, see, they're spying on Trump. And they did it while he was in the White House. This was the best part. He did it while he was in the White House. Only the supposed lie happened during September of 2016 when the campaign was going on, not when Trump was actually in the White House. But don't let, again, facts get in the way. Evidently, Sussman has an acquaintance, a friend, a client who did work on White House, maintaining the internet servers at the White House and at Trump Tower, I guess. And he said that, he and his associates exploited this arrangement, whatever that means. Fox News then immediately says, oh no, Durham, said that they had evidence that Hillary's campaign paid this guy to infiltrate the White House servers. and it's this huge scandal, and Trump came out and made a statement that this is, the biggest story ever, and it's a huge scandal, and so big and so powerful, it's so important. The whole world should be talking about it. Only problem is the time period they're talking about, Trump wasn't in the White House. Obama was actually in the White House. And they were investigating Russians trying to hack into the White House as they had done to the DNC servers. Again, this is another one of those things that they've completely made up. They've completely fabricated, knowing that they can't do anything. They're not going to charge anybody because conveniently the actual statute of limitations is over. But they're talking in terms of this is treason. And if this truly was treasonous, do you think that there would be a statute of limitations on something like that? And do you think they'd be calling for that? Now, Durham didn't indict anyone. There are no charges actually filed. It was basically a line in his motion. But that didn't stop the right-wing outrage machine from getting all worked up and all riled and going forward. And why? The why is the interesting part in my view. Because you look at what Trump's accounting firm did this week. They completely threw him under the bus. When your accountant fires you publicly, that is never really a good thing. When the person who's been doing your tax stuff says we can't stand by our work because we don't believe what you gave us, that's a BFD. That is really a pretty big deal. And a lot more coming down the road. You also had a judge today that handed Trump another big loss. The D.C. Attorney General's suit over the inauguration funds, that ain't going away. They have pulled the Trump organization back into that. This isn't good for him. This ain't good for Trump either. And then add on top of that the fact that Joe Biden has ordered the National Archives to hand over the White House visitor logs from the 4 years that Trump was in the White House so that they can look at who came and who went and where they were and what they were there for. Whatever was written down. Can't be happy. And if that isn't enough, today another story breaks that Trump's Interior Secretary, Ryan Zinke, he actually did, in fact, break federal law and ethics rules by evidently participating in real estate transactions and negotiations with the chairman of Halliburton while he was the head of the organization. And again, you see all these crimes keep coming out. All these crimes keep coming out. Stuff we've been talking about for all these years. And how do you stop people from talking about the actual crimes? Well, you create bigger ones. You create conspiracies. You find the boogie woman. And look, people on the right and left don't like Hillary Clinton. She's an equal opportunity hate monger. People thrilled to see something had happened to her. Which is why they keep choosing her. Which is why they keep attacking her. That's what it's about. Look, I'm no Hillary Clinton fan. But this is nonsense. And the question that I have is, do they know it's nonsense? Or have they consumed so much of their own BS? Have they gone so far down the insanity hole that it doesn't matter anymore? And this is where, we have a problem in this country. Our media is a problem. The thing, fortunately, that I didn't see happen with this Hillary Clinton story, other than the right-wing rage machine, other than the Foxes and the OANs and the Newsmaxes and talk radio, the rest of the journalist segment of our media, they kind of steered away from it because they saw it was what it was, a giant nothing burger. Because again, all of this stuff that is now, oh my God, it's the end. It's, oh my gosh, this is incredible, was all reported on last year. It's not new. it's not news. But what it is, it's something to keep the base all riled up and tingly over. And this is where Democrats have to come out swinging. They've got to get more aggressive in calling out these lies and the liars who tell them. At least that's my thought. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with our good friend Reed Galen from the Lincoln Project about, well, a little of this, a little of that, the truckers rally, the Spygate. Also, your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this.
Q Cells has been like the first around here that focuses on clean energy. For millennials, not a lot of us want to be jumping around job to job trying to figure out what we want to do. But in clean energy, we see a sense of job security and longevity, something that we're going to be able to do for a long time. It's important for Congress to invest in clean energy infrastructure because it sends a positive message to smaller communities like Dalton. It'll provide jobs for those that are struggling to meet their financial needs.
It doesn't happen like we think it does. No one rolls the tanks. No armies meet in pitched battle. It happens quietly, little by little. And because so many think it can't happen, it does happen. Little by little, the rules change. It doesn't seem shocking or sudden. And that's the point. Fewer places to vote, longer lines. Don't worry, they say. We're just improving the system. They hope we won't notice the rules are changing because they lost the last election. They hope we just won't care enough to stop them. They believe they can take America away from us, and we won't even notice. We know who they are. We know what they want. The question is, who are we? Do we let them get away with it, or do we fight? Democracy is on the ballot. Vote while your vote still counts. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Calling all builders, all welders and roofers, engineers and electricians, calling all brick masons and boilermakers, steel workers and steam fitters. Your country is calling you to rebuild America, to create a cleaner, safer, more prosperous future for all. Tackling climate change, this is the job of our lifetime. It's time to build back better. Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we've been saying, look, the outrage machine, all about keeping people all bunched up in the panties and angry and incapable of looking at reason. And this is kind of where we are in this moment, as all of the crimes are being unfurled and we're seeing more and more what came out of the previous administration. The allegations, the insanity, the things that our right-wing outrage machine has done over the years, well, they're ramping it up. And here to share some thoughts on where we are, where this all could take us, and why haven't the Democrats steeled up and begun to fight back. I've asked Reed Galen to come talk with us. Reed is a co-founder of the Lincoln Project. You can check out their stuff at lincolnproject.org, I believe. Reed, thanks for taking time for us.
No, thanks, Rick, as always, for having me.
So, I'm looking at this moment. I'm watching all of the stories coming out, this new Hillary Spygate stuff, which is, wow, it kind of reminds me of one of those 1980s kind of spy novels with great graphic details, but nowhere close to reality. And, it's catching on with that segment because I'm getting hammered with comments and emails and I'm a Clinton defender. Look, I'm not a huge Clinton fan, but when something's BS, it's BS.
Well, I think that's right. And I mean, it also shows you that, that Secretary Clinton is a perennial favorite of the right wing and radical media. She always provides them, regardless of what she's done today, yesterday, or a year ago. fodder because they, look, there's a reason, Rick, they, made a slogan out of "Lock her up" in regards to Mrs. Clinton. As Kevin McCarthy noted several years ago, the entire Benghazi 33 hearings over 3 years that they did when they had control of Congress was just about hobbling her presidential ambitions. So they never run out of newsprint or film to go after her.
And look, I've been saying this for years. None of this is news to our audience. None of this is a surprise. We understand the game. We see it coming. My problem is it doesn't appear to me that Democrats fight back on this stuff hard enough. We're at a moment where maybe you're going to agree with me, maybe you're not, that this could be the last really fair and open election of my lifetime. And yet I don't see the Democrats with any sense of urgency. I don't see them with any sense of message. Even their own polling says that people view them as elitist and preachy and all of that stuff. I want to see someone come out with their dukes balled up and ready to swing.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, look, Rick, there are glimpses of hope. There was just a story, I think, that just posted right before I came on the air with you that said that there are a lot of Democratic organizations that are focused on Democratic governor's races and Democratic secretaries of state races that do understand the fight, that do understand the peril that democracy is in. And that's going to be the fulcrum around which they fight this year, which is, music to our ears, because we believe that this is the fight of our age. As you know, Rick, like none of the rest of it happens. Whatever your policy issue is, whatever your pet issue is, none of it happens without a free and fair government and electorate. And frankly, a two-party system that wants to govern, even if it differs on policy. And so what I think we see before us now is that there are people waking up to this. But one thing I want to say about message too, Rick, is and this is something I think you and your listeners probably know inherently, is that messaging is devised from belief. You have to believe in something to be able to talk about it coherently. And I think that's one thing that Democrats are contending with right now, is that you have a divided party. I don't think it's 50-50 necessarily. I think the establishment wing is bigger than the progressive wing. But the progressive wing is 100% pure in its beliefs and 100% willing to scream about it. And the establishment doesn't quite know what to do with it. And we saw that on the Republican side. In my own experience, the difference is on the Republican side now the inmates run the asylum.
So let's unpack that a bit, because I'm somebody who wants to get things done. I've said this for years. I'm not a cause head. I believe in organized labor. I'm not the mayor or prime minister of Wokistan. I want to get things done. I want to make people's lives better. How do you not have a scenario where, as the right continued to go extreme, radical right, how do you make sure that you don't completely lose the other side with the left going way off the beaten path, where the majority of people are going, well, what choices do we have?
No, I think that's absolutely right, and you hit the nail on the head, which is what we see is like if you put two magnets backwards towards one another, right? They push against each other. They push away from each other. And I think as the right has gone more radical, there's a segment of the left that has moved out further outside the mainstream as well. I think the difference is that the establishment Democrats have been unable or unwilling to stand up to their own party and say, these are not the things that A, we believe in necessarily, or B, let's be clear, if you want to win elections, there are things you must do, must say, because they're out of step with the broad, swath of the American electorate. Purity's fine, right? When it comes to loving a football team or something. Purity in politics rarely works. And I think, Rick, to your point about getting things done, I think it was no less, I've got on my bookcase here, my bookshelf here. Where the hell is it? Oh, I don't know. But, Rules for Radicals, right? Who says, if you're trying to get to 100, and you start at 0 and you get to 30, you didn't fail 70% of the time. You're 30% ahead of where you started. And I think that's one thing that, again, I think it's sometimes easy for those purified activists to say, we want all or we'll take nothing. That's easy. That's the easy way out, because you can say, they didn't give me what I wanted. I'm going to take my ball and go home. You and I, Rick, know that's not how the real world works.
No, and a perfect example of that is the infrastructure bill. I was in favor of getting the bipartisan infrastructure bill pushed through, but there was a moment where we would have gotten nothing because they were trying to tie the Build Back Better plan and the infrastructure bill, which at the beginning I'm like, this is a good idea, it's a good negotiation tactic, but at some point you got to get something done. And knowing that eventually the Build Back Better plan was dead on arrival. I didn't realize at the time it would be Joe Manchin to kill it, but that's kind of in that line.
Well, I think that's right, but I think, well, first, I mean, we now have proof in the terms of, I guess, a memo he wrote to Senator Schumer sometime last fall or late summer that said, "I'm not for Build Back Better unless it gets to this number." And Rick, as you know, in the getting things done sphere, people in Washington love to throw around numbers. It's 3.5 trillion, it's 2.1 trillion, it's 1.3 trillion. I mean, this is all monopoly money that we're leaving the bill to our kids, our grandkids, and our great grandkids. But it's always easier to spend somebody else's money. But what does it mean if you can chop $1.8 trillion off of something as a negotiating tactic? Did you really know what it is you were trying to do in the first place? And I think they started with a number as opposed to an objective, and said, what is it we're trying to do here, and let's assign a number to that. I think that they probably could have found some way to get Manchin on board, but then he became, the punching bag that everybody just got on board with, and he also, frankly, Rick, gave them an excuse not to get something done.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, because I'm hearing a lot of people saying, well, the left's got to learn the lessons that the right learned years ago, because when the right wants something, they figure out how to get everybody in line and move their agenda. When they take power, they get the things that are important to them. Supreme Court justices, tax cuts. They get what is in their base, what is in their message interest. As where the left, where Democrats don't. They don't drive the steamroller well.
Well, this is true, but it's a fundamentally different worldview, and a different makeup in the two parties. I mean, even when I was a Republican, to your point, Rick, if the president of the United States was a Republican and he said something, regardless, it could have been gibberish. Every Republican member of Congress, the Senate, local Republican official, the conservative press would have said these were words handed down by God.
Exactly.
Right. Joe Biden goes to Atlanta last month and gives a very strong speech on voting rights and democracy. And what happens? People are like, oh, well, Democrats are like, he shouldn't have invoked Bull Connor. I think he crossed a line. Like, what are you talking about? He didn't cross any lines. If anything, he was strong. And that's to your point, Rick, earlier, is I think Democratic voters do want to see signs of strength. I don't think, and listen, I talk to a lot of Democrats too, more than I ever thought I would in my life. They want strength. They want shows of strength and backbone and steely-eyed determination to do the things necessary to win elections. The problem is that sometimes winning elections is a tough business. The American political system, Rick, as you know, has been ugly since the day it started. Right? We are not an easygoing political people. Never have been, and we're probably as bad as we've ever been. But the idea now that there's one side that's totally anti-democratic and one side that's too genteel to understand it and put up the fight puts us in a very bad position.
It absolutely does. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Reed Galen. Reed is the co-founder of the Lincoln Project. You can check out their website at lincolnproject.us. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. If you got a thought, question, comment for Reed, give us a yell, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Now, to that point, I've said for years that working class voters like me, want to see a party who's going to, in a street fight, going to ball up their digits and get in there and take a couple of punches, not just offer to hold my coat. And sadly, what we've seen for too long is a party willing to hold the coat or, turning and going in the other direction. And we're in a moment right now where this is a defining moment. Because I think I've talked with other Lincoln Project people about this. The message isn't policy now. The message is, do you believe in democracy or do you not? Do you believe in the rule of law or do you not? Do you believe in our institutions and this country or not? Because the other side, your former party of which you helped create, they want to burn the damn thing down.
Well, yeah, that's right. And I mean, that's always the ironic piece of authoritarian movements are the ones that we see out of the Republican Party now, which is, it's not surprising. In fact, it is the norm to have the working class on their side, mixed with the country club, the super wealthy set, right? We've seen this in history, really just even the last 100 years. Is not an unusual phenomenon. Democrats seeded the working class of the middle of the country far too fast. in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, and now they've been pushed out to the coasts. But Rick, the one thing I will say again in my conversations is there are Democrats in rural areas. There are working class Democrats. There are church-going Democrats, but no one talks to them. No one asks them for their vote, and frankly, no one speaks the language that they speak. There are parts of the country where you're a working class Democrat for a long time. You're a working class Republican, right? If you're standing on a road crew, maybe you argue about politics, but the way you see the world is probably not significantly different from the other guy. The only thing you probably both agree on is that, like, the lady driving by in the Range Rover with the white dog in her lap has no conception of how you live. And I think that that's a part that we really need to understand is there are votes for Democrats out there, but Democratic candidates have to go ask for them. And groups like us are going to go find them and help talk to them. And
that's a good thing. It's the reason we started this program over 16 years ago. The world that me and my truck driver buddies were looking at, and the positions we were taking were very different, given the fact that, look, truck drivers sit in a truck all day long and they're consuming, Hannity, Limbaugh, the whole 9 yards of rage machine, products. And I actually had a union guy tell me we'd make more money if there were no union here. That's how far down the road this guy had gotten. And over the years, I haven't seen the kind of counterbalance of message. There are people saying, oh, we need the fairness doctrine again. No, we need people who are willing to stand up and fight for what they believe in. And that, to me, is the simple answer.
Well, I think that's right. And I think especially, too, especially with private sector unions, there is, I think, a lot of opportunity there for them. And Rick, we're seeing this, whether or not it's at Starbucks, whether or not it's at Amazon or elsewhere. Or the fact that there are people who just won't work for $12 an hour anymore, right? That in and of itself is sort of a mass unionization, even if it's not organized, which is, the power of the individual worker has ebbed over the last 40 years. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But I think now what you're starting to see is that there's a turning of the page, but the Republican Party is never going to turn that page, right? They're never going to. And so I think the Democrats have a real opportunity to do that, but they have to get away from being beholden to the same big corporate interest that, frankly, Republicans are.
Yeah, no, you're spot on accurate. And for me, there's a spot right there where I think unity can happen. There are a number of issues that I believe that we can bring the country and unite the country. And I believe they're working class issues. On Election Day 2020, and I've said this a bunch of times, I wasn't arguing over who won or who lost yet because I knew it was going to take time. I was out leading a strike of 55 workers who 3/4 of them voted for Trump. I was out there with them doing that because they were fighting what was the right fight: better wages, hours, conditions, better opportunities. These are the kind of things that I think we should be focusing on, along with our trade policies and bringing jobs and recreating a national security manufacturing powerhouse in this country. Those are areas I think that Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. We can bring those people together with that kind of a message and agenda.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, I think that, I'm not an expert enough on trade, globalization, any of that stuff to be credible on it, probably. But I mean, to your point about individual union members, I think there was a story out of Texas today, Rick, where I think after 5.5 years off the job, there's a steel workers union at an oil refinery in East Texas where, they're finally going to get back to work. That's a long time to be out of work, as you know. And Texas is a right to work state. Anyway, but these guys somehow managed to still have their union. And so, it took a while, but finally, I think it's an Exxon refinery or an Chevron, whatever it is, Exxon Mobil refinery said, okay, let's find a way to do this. And I think that, we have to get away from and even Jamie Dimon, right, who runs JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the world, said, like, we have to get away from the shareholder value thing and back to, like, why do people want to work for us in the first place? And I think that unions can be, again, especially private sector unions, can and should have a part in that. And Democrats shouldn't be afraid of it.
No, let me ask you this: as a former Republican, how hard is it to say that?
I lived in California for 10 years, so I got pretty leavened on that.
Okay.
But I'll say this: is that I was never an anti-union guy. I wasn't a very good Republican either. But I'll be honest with you too, Rick, that I have not been a union worker. I've never belonged to a union. And so frankly, it has been something that I haven't been really in touch with, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of Republicans are like that. It's just, that's my point, is that like Republicans are vacuuming up working class voters, and the people who are running and raising money and spending that money have little to no contact with the people with whom.
That's an excellent point. Last line of questioning I've got for you, looking into our north. You see this trucker for freedom rally that the right is now all in on. When there were Black Lives Matter protests, they were passing legislation to run people down in the streets, but now they're all in because, well, it's tyranny to ensure that people coming back from over the border from the U.S. back into Canada are vaccinated. I'm curious where you come down on where this is all going.
Well, I think it's a reminder that the right-wing rage and media complex is incredibly effective and efficient at moving a message. I don't know who organized these things. I don't know if it was some guy on Facebook. I don't know if it was a guy in his cab who had it or whatever. But certainly once there was a little bit of a nucleus, some, other people, whether or not it was Facebook or American donors, got involved. I think it is one of those things, though, Rick, where it is, I think it's a little too hard to understand. I mean, most Canadians, as I understand it, live, pretty close to the American border, but most Americans do not live that close to the Canadian border. And most Americans can't really understand, okay, well, wait, you've got to have this to go to Canada. Okay, well, it's their country, fine. But what you see they're trying to do is ultimately the goal is to try and connect the truckers to the supply chain, right? And you can't get what you want because Joe Biden, blah, 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 blah. Well, the truth is, I mean, nobody's going without toilet paper or food, right? Nobody had an unhappy Christmas because they couldn't get what they wanted or needed. And so it's just one more thing I heard you coming back from break. They've got to consistently just jab that adrenal gland of their viewers and their listeners, because I think without it, frankly, Rick, they're so probably overwrought emotionally and psychologically based on how amped up they've been for 5 years, that without that continuous stream of vitriol, they'd probably all just collapse.
Which brings me to this interesting poll that I saw Gallup conducted. And it's one of these weird things. It said 17% of Americans are satisfied with the way things are going in the U.S., which is a near low, 40-year low. And yet 85% of people are satisfied with the way things are going in their personal life, which is a 40-year high. Right. How do you? It's one of these things. How can you be so down on one part but so high on another?
Well, this is not an unusual phenomenon. It's the same thing if you ask people, like, what's your opinion of Congress? And they're like, it has, Congress typically has a lower approval rating than most sexually transmitted diseases. But, if you ask, do you like your member of Congress, even if they don't know who they are, they say, oh, yes, I love them. So that's not unusual. But I blame it on social media. I blame it on, on the effectiveness of the Tucker Carlsons and the Hannitys and the Foxes of the world to just, try and convince everybody that the world is coming to an end. So that's not an unusual thing. And I think actually, it's a good note that you picked up, Rick, which is people are like, oh, well, in a midterm election, a president with bad approval ratings, he'll lose seats in the House, lose seats in the Senate, whatever. That might be true. But if those Democratic candidates in those important races can say, look at your life, look what's happening in your life, in your community, and sort of, get the clouds to part a little bit, I think there's cautious optimism.
Yeah, the old Ronald Reagan, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And clearly, I think people are right now. But Reed, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you. Good stuff as always. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
No, thanks, Rick, as always. Have a good night.
You as well. Our good friend Reed Galen. Make sure you check out their website, lincolnproject.us. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at the work that they do there. All good stuff.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
It doesn't matter what kind of weather. It doesn't matter what time of day or night. When Mother Nature's done her worst, the only thing that matters to us is keeping the lights on for you. The hardworking women and men of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, dedicated to keeping the power on in communities all across the country. Because when bad weather strikes, we know what matters most. IBEW, the power professionals.
Calling all builders. Your country is calling you. Tackling climate change is the job of our lifetime. It's time to build back better. Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, the outrage merchants today were all over the map. And one of the places that, again, I found most interesting was Fox News, who had somebody I think is a smart guy, a Georgetown law professor, somebody who's argued, I think, in front of the Supreme Court. But Fox News' legal analyst, this Jonathan Turley, going on about Trudeau using the emergency powers and how they're dealing with the freedom fighters. He said, by Trudeau doing what he's doing, he said by this rationale, they could have cracked down on the civil rights movement. They could have arrested Dr. Martin Luther King. Did you know they could have arrested King for this disobedience stuff? Never mind the reality and the fact that he was arrested 29 times. He wrote the letters from the Birmingham jail and it was actually in jail. Never mind that. But this is the kind of ridiculousness we're subjected to. Here to share some thoughts on the Big Convoy, and maybe he'll disagree with me. I've asked our good friend, former Illinois Congressman and presidential candidate in 2020, Joe Walsh, to come talk with us. He hosts the White Flag podcast. Make sure you check that out. White Flag with Joe Walsh. Anywhere where you get your podcast, you can find Joe. Joe, thanks for taking time for us, buddy.
Hey, Rick, I always like to be with you, my friend.
So give me your take right from the start on the Freedom Convoy. I want to get your take before we jump into the middle of it.
I think the most important point to make, and look, I'm all about people protesting. I'm all about civil disobedience. I get all of that. The biggest point to make, though, is that, and I come from the world of right-wing media, it's all about pissing off their audience. It's all about creating outrage and inflaming people. And whether it's what's going on up in Canada or it's this noise about Hillary spying on Trump, it's all about riling up their audience. And the truth doesn't matter. The truth does not matter.
Yeah, and this is where I've been. And look, I'm somebody like you. Look, I was in Wisconsin 11 years ago today, shutting down their capital. I was with another 150,000 people in Madison. I've been on protests. I've been to all of these things. And you understand that there are consequences for actions. I am all in favor of them doing this. My problem is the right-wing anger machine, the outrage candy folks, they're not talking about what the issue is. And the issue is these truck drivers have the freedom not to cross the border into the U.S. That's what this comes down to. This isn't a blanket, every truck driver in the country has to be vaccinated. It's the ones who come into the U.S. and come back. That's the issue. And what we should be looking at is, why did they do that? How bad have we boogered things up that the Canadians are going, no, you're coming back from the U.S. We can't have you come back without quarantining.
Yeah, but you know what, Rick? This Canadian thing, to me, the Freedom Convoy, it's almost a distraction, or it's the latest example of, from the very beginning of this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, at every freaking stage of this, the right-wing anger machine that I was a part of, they've been, it's a hoax. COVID's not real. Masks are bad. Don't lock us down. The vaccines are BS. At every stage of this thing, they've been opposite of doing the right thing. And this is just more of it.
Yeah. Do you see this? Do you see this coming here? Now I look at Dan Crenshaw. He is a representative from Texas. He's saying, no, all you Canadian truckers, just come here to the U.S. Just come and stay. We'll get you a visa. Don't worry about it. Come on down here.
And a former colleague, Rick, Eric Bolling, who's now on Newsmax, crazy Newsmax that I used to be on, he's talking about 1,000 American truckers are gonna send their rigs to D.C. to protest vaccine mandates here in America. What mandates? I'm serious. What mandates are they protesting here? There are none.
Well, that's because, again, as you've pointed out, truth doesn't matter. As long as you can keep people riled up and angry at something, because there are still people who believe that Biden is mandating everyone to get a vaccine, even though the Supreme Court shot that down and it is done. They still want to keep people all bunched up in the panties and angry, and this is a way to do it. And look, who is right-wing talk radio's audience? Who's talk radio's audience? The trucking industry. It's the reason I started this show almost 17 years ago, because all my trucker buddies were losing their freaking minds.
Hey, Rick, you said something there that's really important that we can't scoot by. You and I disagree politically. You and I could spend hours debating issues. MSNBC is biased to the left. CNN leans left. Fox News is well right. But the important point here is the truth. And this is Trump's legacy, and right-wing media, from where I come from, has picked it up. Forget about bias. They don't deal in basic truths anymore. This is a much more dangerous place than just being biased.
No, and I just had this conversation with a friend today. I was saying, look, it used to be Fox News would start with a kernel of truth. There would be a kernel of truth to whatever story they made. Now they're just pulling stuff out of whichever orifice you want to imagine and spinning a yarn that is, wow, quite impressive. And look, whoever is writing their tales, give them, gold star, because it keeps my friends all in a tizzy. I'll tell you that.
Well, and Rick, they're all in unison. They're all in sync. Every talk radio station you turn on, Fox News, all the rest of them, they are all singing from the same hymnal. And the MSNBCs and ABCs and NBCs and CBSs of the world, they're not all on the same page. And that's a problem.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been telling people for years, having done this job for as long as I have, and have known people in right-wing spaces, that the think tanks of the right, the state policy network think tanks, they write this stuff out. They've got issue of the day. In fact, I get some of them. You want to talk about Bidenflation. You want to talk about, the supply chains. I get, here's the talking point. Here's a story that you can use. Here's a guest that you can come on and talk about. And here are the questions to ask them. The right wing understands that this space, more than ever, is political theater. They're putting on a presentation to get the message, whatever message of the day is, and do it in a way for maximum outrage, and that everyone really is on the same page.
Well, and Rick, to be fair, I think most media platforms do a variation of that. Look, I'm on MSNBC a lot. I love going on MSNBC, but they generally have a playbook. But again, the difference here is the Fox Newses of the world, the right-wing media platform, screw the truth. I mean, Tucker Carlson and the rest of them, Rick, they blew right through the truth. The truth doesn't matter, man. That's dangerous, dangerous territory.
Yeah. For me, it's about the talk radio space. I know a lot of, individual talk radio hosts who, they get their marching orders, and you're right. Everyone's singing out of the same hymnal. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Joe Walsh, former Illinois congressman and host of the White Flag with Joe Walsh podcast. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that, or just go to wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure you look for our podcast anywhere where you get them. But Joe, here's the thing. I was listening today, and they're going on about this Durham report. And, I'm going, going, where's this coming from? What I want to know is, where's the charge? I mean, we've got a nice story. There's a whole bunch of intrigue, and they were spying on them. This sounds like one of those bad 80s novels when the Cold War was still going on that they want us to buy into. Or am I missing the main point here?
I don't understand what the main point is. I honestly don't understand what the story is. And everything I've read, forget about what you listen to on Fox News or talk radio. When you actually read what we know so far, it's nothing. Could it be something? Maybe, but it's nothing right now. They're lying about it. Tucker Carlson and these talk radio people are lying about it right now. Jesse Waters on Fox News was on earlier tonight and basically said Hillary should be locked up, thrown out of the country because she committed treason spying on Trump. That's an out and out lie, but that's what they're putting out.
Yeah. Now, for me, if that were true, if Durham had the evidence to do this, he would have moved forward on an indictment. That's how our system works. But conveniently enough, as I understand this, statute of limitations have run out, and conveniently enough, just in time for him to come out with this claim to create this kind of it's all this nefarious plot. Hillary was spying on Trump. I actually heard a guy today saying this. Hillary was spying on Trump while he was in the White House. I'm going, what are you talking about?
Hey, Rick, 4 years ago, I'm on the radio, a couple hundred stations around the country, and damn near in right-wing talk radio, and damn near every caller I got was the same. Obama is spying on Trump. 4 years later, look what they're doing. Now it's Hillary was spying on Trump. I don't know who it will be in 4 years from now.
No, it's just crazy. But, this is one of those things where you just go, there's so much chaos going on. There's so much insanity. The average voter is being just hammered with crazy all the time. And my thought process is this is deliberate to get people to turn away, to say, you know what, I want to be able to do what I can control. I don't care about voting. I don't care about politics. Just leave me alone. I think that's part of the plan.
And Rick, it works, and it's working. And unless something dramatically changes, Kevin McCarthy will be the next Speaker of the House. Republicans will take over the House and the Senate, because I can tell you, because I hear from hundreds of Republican voters every day who are generally angry at me now, they're fired up. They can't wait to vote. Democrats, moderates, not so much. That's a real problem.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where I keep listening to the right wing talk about why hasn't Joe Biden united the country, and I'm going, explain how that works when we've got you out here every day saying what a horrible person he is and how every problem is his problem. In fact, there was one of the Fox News people blathering on about how, in 2020, Joe Biden did all this stuff. He was responsible for the lockdown. And you go, wait a second, he was candidate Biden at that time. What you're talking about is Trump. They've forgotten Trump was in office, and everything that's happened ever is now Joe Biden's fault.
Rick, the Republican Party base, the real mega cult from where I come from, it's about 35 to 40% of the country, and they're really fired up. Biden's job, though, is to fire up the other 60 to 65% of the country. 81 million people in 2020 voted for Biden. Not because they like Biden, but because they were scared to death of Trump. And so many of those people right now are going to sit at home. Most of America doesn't like Trump. If they vote in 2022, the Republicans won't win. But right now, they're not expected to vote.
So is the answer to get out there and start? Because I've been saying, I don't know what the Democrats are waiting for. The sky is literally falling. There are those of us who believe 2022 could be the last free and fair election most of us get to see for a while. Why am I not seeing a sense of urgency coming out of the White House or out of leadership? Why am I not seeing them, getting out and throwing a couple of punches at least?
Rick, I don't hear Democrat elected officials speak like you do or speak like I do. And look, I like Joe Biden, nice enough guy, but he's not capable of conveying that sense of urgency. I have not heard one Democratic leader convey that sense of urgency. And unless they do, I think they're in for a world of hurt this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a long election cycle if things continue, and we don't get some actual things done. Thank you, Joe Manchin. But it is what it is. But Joe, I appreciate you taking some time for us. As always, great talking with you. I hope folks will check out the podcast, White Flag with Joe Walsh. Find that wherever you grab your podcasts. We'll get links out on social media. But Joe, I hope you'll come back and talk with us again real soon.
Always keep fighting, brother.
Thanks so much, our good friend Joe Walsh. Again, make sure you grab the podcast there, wherever you get yours. The reality in this is simple, very simple. Democrats, get your head out of your behinds. Get out there and get with the message. I truly believe this could be, if things go the way the Republicans want, this could be the last free and fair election we see for some time. That's not a good thing. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this.